Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I've always believed in quiet ambition, a focus that doesn't waver despite the noise around you. It's what got me here. Brandon Gibbs, the successful businessman that people write about in glossy magazines. But if you asked me what I loved, what really made me tick, it wasn't the money, the admiration of the socialites, or the endless handshakes in boardrooms. It was hotels. Designing them, envisioning them, watching them come to life. It was the one thing that always made me feel like the world was worth the struggle. Growing up in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn with my parents, it was hard to imagine a future that wasn't about survival. What kept me going were books. I devoured adventure novels, losing myself in stories about explorers, adventurers, and dreamers. It was there, on those pages, where I found my passion. Hotels. I wanted to build spaces that people could escape to, places where stories began. And so, I chased that dream like a man possessed. Now, decades later, I'd built more than a few of those dream hotels, each one more successful than the last. My name had become synonymous with luxury, and people sought me out for my vision. But somehow, that success felt empty. Relationships, not for me. I'd had my heart shattered once by Meredith, a wealthy girl who saw my dreams as silly fantasies back in college. After her, I put up walls that no one seemed capable of breaking through. I didn't even bother trying anymore. Life was good, or so I thought. But all of that was about to change when my business partner, Jeffrey, walked into my office with news that would throw my carefully ordered life into chaos. "Brandon, you're not going to believe this," Jeffrey began, closing the door to my office behind him. He had that grin that always preceded bad news disguised as opportunity. "Arthur Chandler. You know who he is, right?" "Of course," I replied, putting down the architectural sketches I'd been working on. Chandler was one of the wealthiest men in New York, a real estate magnate with an empire that stretched across continents. "What about him?" "He's interested in partnering with us on the Riverside project. He thinks our designs are bold, innovative, exactly what he wants. But there's a catch." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for the punchline. Jeffrey thrived on drama, so I knew he was building up to something. He has this unique condition when it comes to his business partners. He only deals with men who are married or engaged. Says it's a test of stability, integrity, and focus. I stared at Jeffrey, the weight of his words sinking in slowly. "What does that have to do with me?" "Everything. The dinner is next week, and you meet a fiancée, or a wife. Preferably a fiancée. Chandler has some old-fashioned beliefs, and this is non-negotiable. You show up solo, and we're out." I could feel the tension rising in my chest. A fake fiancée. This had to be some kind of joke. "You expect me to just conjure up a woman out of thin air to play along with this charade? And you want me to do it in a week?" Jeffrey shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "Look, I know it's crazy, but this deal is worth millions. We're talking about securing the future of our firm. I've already lined up some candidates. Well-mannered, good-looking, the whole package. I'm sure one of them will fit the bill." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't business, this was farce. But the Riverside project was too important to pass up. It was my chance to design something that would redefine modern hospitality, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. "All right," I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Set up the meetings." And just like that, my life spiraled into the absurd world of fake fiancés. The next few days were a blur of interviews. One after another, they paraded into my office, each woman more stunning than the last, each one more hopelessly wrong for the part. There was Julia, a statuesque brunette with eyes that could melt steel. She was an actress, and it showed. Her smile was practiced, her words rehearsed, and all I could think about was how she'd probably end up on the cover of some tabloid the minute she left my office. Then came Vanessa, a socialite who barely acknowledged my presence as she flipped through her phone. She wasn't interested in me or the role she'd be playing. She was interested in my bank account. By the end of the third day, I was ready to give up. Jeffrey's list of potential fiancés was a bust. No one fit. They were all either too eager to cash in on the opportunity or too focused on themselves to bother pretending to care about what mattered to me. I sat in my office, staring out the window as the city lights flickered on. The weight of the situation pressed down on me. This wasn't just about business anymore. It felt like I was failing at something deeper, something personal. For the first time in a long time, I wanted something more than just success. I wanted someone who saw me, not just my wealth or my power. But how was I going to find that in a week? Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Meredith walked back into my life. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was on the verge of telling Jeffrey to call the whole thing off when my assistant buzzed in. "Mr. Gibbs, there's a Meredith Spencer here to see you." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Meredith. My Meredith. No, that couldn't be possible. I stood up, trying to steady my breath as the door opened. And there she was, older, but still just as stunning as she'd been in college. Her dark hair was cut in a sleek bob, her eyes cold and calculating as ever. And behind that ice-cold exterior, I could see it. She was up to something. "Brandon," she said with a smirk, her voice dripping with familiarity. "It's been a long time." "What are you doing here, Meredith?" I asked, my voice sharp with old wounds. "I heard about your little problem. Needing a fiancé, are we?" She cooed, stepping closer. "I could help, you know. We were good together once." I felt my heart race, a mix of anger and confusion clouding my judgment. Meredith was the last person I wanted help from. She had shattered my heart once, and I had no intention of giving her the chance to do it again. "I don't need your help," I said, turning away from her, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, Brandon," she purred, walking around to face me again. "You need me more than you think. Arthur Chandler is my uncle." The room seemed to spin. Chandler, her uncle. This was no coincidence. Meredith had always been a master manipulator, and now she had the upper hand. "Let me guess," she said, her voice low. "You're struggling to find the right woman, someone who will play along with this ridiculous charade. You're desperate, and here I am, the perfect solution." I clenched my fists, the frustration boiling inside me. She was right. I needed her, and I hated it. But what was her angle? What did she want? Meredith's smile widened as she saw the realization dawn on my face. She knew I was trapped, and she was enjoying every second of it. "What do you want, Meredith?" I asked, my voice barely containing the anger simmering beneath the surface. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs elegantly. "Oh, it's simple, really. I want a stake in your next project. I want to be part of it, to show the world that I'm not just some pretty face from a wealthy family. I want power, Brandon, and you're going to give it to me." I laughed bitterly. "You think I'm going to just hand that over to you because I need a fiancé for one night?" Her eyes gleamed with triumph. "Not just one night. You see, Arthur is very traditional. He'll expect to see us together more than once. A real relationship. If you want that deal, you're going to have to play along for a while. And in return, I'll give you what you need to secure it." I stared at her, the weight of her proposal sinking in. This wasn't just about a business deal anymore. It was about control, manipulation, and old wounds that had never fully healed. Meredith was offering me exactly what I needed, but at a cost far higher than I had ever anticipated. And in that moment, I realized that the real battle wasn't with Arthur Chandler, it was with Meredith. She was the antagonist of my story, and this time, I wasn't going to let her win. But how could I fight someone who already had me cornered? Meredith had me where she wanted. For the first time in years, I felt powerless, like a pawn in her manipulative hands. But there was something deeper gnawing at me. This wasn't just about the business deal, or even our past. Meredith had always been about control, about bending people to her will, and now she was playing the ultimate game. I needed to get ahead of her. The deal with Arthur Chandler was crucial, but I couldn't let Meredith hold all the cards. I agreed to her terms, for now, masking my frustration behind a cool exterior. "All right," I said, my voice even. "You win, Meredith. We'll play this game your way. For now." Her smirk was triumphant, her eyes glinting with victory. "Smart decision, Brandon. You'll see, we make a good team." I said nothing more as she left my office, leaving me in the dim light of the evening, my mind racing. How had I let this happen? But more importantly, how could I turn the tables on her? The next few days passed in a blur of preparations. Meredith and I attended dinners, made appearances, played the part of the perfect couple. Arthur Chandler was thoroughly impressed with us, so much so that the deal seemed practically sealed. Yet each time Meredith flashed that victorious smile, it fueled the fire inside me. I couldn't stand to lose again. Not to her. But as the days wore on, something unexpected began to happen. I saw a flicker of something beneath Meredith's polished facade, a vulnerability, a crack in her armor. It came out in small moments, like when she seemed distracted, staring into space with a distant look in her eyes. It was as though she wasn't as invincible as I remembered. I needed to understand her motives. This wasn't just about power or wealth anymore. It was personal, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. It didn't take long before I found what I was looking for. Through a few discreet inquiries, I learned that Meredith's world wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Her family's fortune had taken a hit. Chandler's empire wasn't as invincible as it appeared. Worse, Meredith had been cut off from her family's trust fund after a falling out with her father, Arthur Chandler himself. She needed me as much as I needed her. Armed with this knowledge, I confronted her. "Meredith," I began one evening after another one of our charade dinners, "I know the truth about your family. You don't have the upper hand here like you think." Her face paled for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "You think you know everything, don't you, Brandon? But you have no idea what I've been through. I had to fight for everything after you left. My father turned his back on me, and I've had to claw my way back into his good graces. This deal isn't just about you or me. It's about proving to him that I'm worth something." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something real in Meredith. She wasn't just the manipulative girl from my past. She was someone who had been hurt, just like me. "I understand that, Meredith," I said softly. "But if you think I'm going to let you walk all over me again, you're wrong. We can make this work, but it has to be on equal footing. No more games." She hesitated, her eyes locking with mine. There was a tension between us, years of unresolved pain and anger, but also something else, an unspoken understanding that we were both broken in our own ways. Finally, she nodded. "All right, no more games." But something still felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that Meredith was hiding something deeper, something that would change everything. The night of the final dinner with Arthur Chandler arrived. This was it, the culmination of weeks of pretending, scheming, and carefully navigating Meredith's web. We arrived at his estate, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. Meredith was her charming, poised self, and Arthur was beaming with approval. As the evening drew to a close, Arthur pulled me aside. "Brandon, I've been impressed with you from the start. You and Meredith make an excellent team, and I'm ready to move forward with the partnership." Relief washed over me. Finally, this nightmare was over. But just as I was about to respond, Arthur's demeanor changed. His eyes darkened, and he leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "There's something you should know," he said. "Meredith isn't who you think she is." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Arthur's gaze was steady, almost pitying. "She's been playing you from the start, Brandon. This whole engagement, this entire charade, it wasn't just about the deal. She's been using you to gain control of your company. She's planning to take it all." The ground beneath me seemed to shift. "That's impossible," I stammered. "She wouldn't." "She already has," Arthur interrupted, his voice cold. I didn't want to believe it myself, but she's had her lawyers drafting documents behind your back. She plans to take full ownership after the deal goes through. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so careful, so cautious. And yet, I'd walked right into her trap. Arthur's words lingered in the air as I made my way back to Meredith, my mind racing. How could I have been so blind? But as I approached her, something unexpected happened. She turned to me, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. "Brandon," she whispered, "we need to talk." Before I could respond, Meredith took my hand and led me outside, away from the crowd. There, under the moonlight, she confessed. "Arthur's right," she said, her voice cracking. "I was planning to take over your company. It started as revenge, Brandon. I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me, but somewhere along the way I realized I couldn't do it, not to you." Her words hung in the air like a heavy weight, and for a moment I didn't know what to say. "You had everything you needed to destroy me," I said quietly. "Why stop now?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability she had been hiding. "Because I don't want to be that person anymore. I'm tired of the lies, the manipulation. I've hurt too many people, Brandon. And I realized that in trying to take everything from you, I was losing myself." I stood there, stunned, trying to process everything. The woman who had spent years plotting against me was standing before me, broken and vulnerable, admitting her mistakes. And in that moment, I realized that we had both been trapped in the past, held captive by old wounds that had never healed. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally, my voice steady. "But I believe you." Meredith nodded, wiping away a tear. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to start over." And just like that, the game was over. The lies, the manipulation, the power struggle, it all melted away in the face of something real, something raw. We were no longer enemies, but two people who had been broken by life, trying to find a way forward. The deal with Arthur Chandler went through without a hitch. Meredith, true to her word, stepped away from the company, leaving me to rebuild on my own terms. She disappeared from my life as quickly as she had re-entered it, leaving behind a bittersweet sense of closure. I went back to my work, designing hotels, building the future I had always dreamed of. But something had changed. I no longer saw the world in the black and white terms I once had. People were more complicated than that, even the ones who hurt you. Months passed, and one day, as I was reviewing plans for a new project, I received a letter. It was from Meredith. In it, she explained that she had left the city, moved to a quiet town upstate. She had started over, just like she said she would. The letter ended with a simple line that stayed with me long after I read it. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Brandon. I know I'm still searching." And with that, the story of Brandon Gibbs and Meredith Spencer came to a quiet, unexpected end. Not with revenge or triumph, but with a realization that we were both searching for something more than just success or power. We were searching for peace. I never saw Meredith again, but her letter remained with me, tucked away in a drawer, a reminder of how fragile life can be. It made me think about the choices we make, the people we hurt, and the ways we try to mend the cracks in our souls. In the end, the most unexpected part of the story wasn't Meredith's betrayal or even her redemption. It was the simple truth that we're all searching for something we may never fully understand.